Welcome back. Frank Coswell Voices Cosmic. Getting towards the end now. I think it might be just 2 days to go. Let's see if they can get back to Earth or are lost in space forever. Next chapter is do the daddy thing. There's something about the way the Earth just sits there in the middle of all that blackness with nothing holding it up that makes you worry about it. I kept thinking that it just looked like it had going to fall over. I kept thinking that if I just looked away, it just might fall. I was so busy keeping the planet up, I completely forgot about Samson 2 until he suddenly said, okay, we could go now. Go where? If we burn one of the engines for 11 minutes, that will push us out of the moon's orbit and shoot us towards the Earth. I said, we don't have engines. This is a solar-powered dandelion. Samson 2 was flicking through the manual. We have 2 retros and 2 thrusters for burning out of orbit and for backing out of trouble. We could use them now or what? Go to Tesco. Or we could go around the moon one more time. Why do we want to do that? Samson 2 looked up from the manual. If we stayed in orbit but dropped to a lower altitude of say 68 miles, that would give us greater velocity, so we'd leave the orbit faster. Then, if my calculations are right, Earth would be some 10,000 miles nearer by the time we've been round again, so we wouldn't have to go as far to go. So by adding the extra speed and the shorter distance, we wouldn't lose as much time by going round and would be on a much more beneficial flight path. They're really good, these log tables. So we did another lap of the moon. The first time, because of the angle and the shadow, we'd barely seen the lunar surface. This time, as we passed only 68 miles above it, we felt as if we could do every boulder and rock. I got the spotter's guide out from behind the sunscreen and pointed out the famous bits. Sea of Tranquility, where Neil Armstrong made his first giant leap. Samson 2 snorted at that too. The Freer Morrow Formation, where Apollo 13 had been meant to land. And the Sea of Storms, where Alan Bean camped. I said, you know someone who's been walked down there. You see that bit there? Ridiculous, said Samson 2. There's no footage of it because he broke the TV camera, said Florida. How convenient, said Samson 2. He was the 4th man to walk on the moon. The 3rd was his friend, Peter Conrad. And you know what Alan said? He said that part of him never came back. He said he wakes up in the night sometimes and thinks he's back there. And sometimes, when something as big as happening up front, he feels like he's watching from up there. Like the Alan Bean you met on Earth, he's an avatar in a game, not like the real Alan Bean. I looked back to the others. They'd all gone so quiet. I thought they must be really impressed with what Florida had said. They were playing on the wrist stations. When we were back on the dark side of the moon again, we all had the same feeling of nervousness and dread as we had the first time. We watched the edge of that curved absence where we knew the moon was, waiting for something to appear. And then something did. Earth, again, home. Okay, are we ready for the burn? 29 minutes to go, according to me, said Samson 2. If we burn the engines for 11 minutes, we'll be on our way home. How do we know we're right? Said Max. I've never been wrong before, shrugged Samson 2. Not about maths. And if you are wrong, what happens then? Well, it would be unlikely that we would miss the Earth's gravitational field completely, but we might get caught in a very wide orbit, too far out to re-enter safely. We'd become a satellite of Earth, I suppose, like a lot of space debris, or a comet. Maybe if a comet went by, we might get pulled by its gravitational field and... Stop talking, yelled Max. Can't you see you're scaring us to death? But it's only a simulation, said Samson 2. The worrying prospect of being dragged around the solar system forever on the back end of a comet was what motivated my genius idea. I said, Max, give us your station. What for? You have your own. Yeah, but mine's got professional golfer on it. Yours has got Orbiter 4. And somewhere in the menus there must be a free trajectory flight simulation. If we play to using the specifications for the Dandelion, which are all on here inside the cover of this manual, then we'll be able to find our figures are right or not. If we play it in a parallel, then our real trip, we can choose burn engines. And if it says good call, we know we're okay, we can burn the engines. And if it says, oh, you're dead, then we're dead. Only in the simulation though. In real life, we won't do anything, so we'll get top marks in the simulation. That, said Samson 2, is genius. Not genius, Florida beamed at me. Just gifted and talented. So Samson 2 set up the wrist station and played Orbiter 4. I copied every move he made, dropping the dandelion down just the right altitude, holding her steady, getting her ready for the burn. I told Max to prepare. You can start the burn. I don't want to. What? But you and Hassan fought for each other to do that job. Led Hassan. I don't want to go back there. Back where? And he pointed to Earth. Earth? Come on, how can you not want to go back to Earth? It's better here. How's it better here? This is deep space. But before he could answer, Hassan also said, it's better here. And Samson too said, it is an unexpectedly enjoyable simulation. I really enjoy the weightlessness effect. I like playing, said Hassan. I like hide and seek, rock, paper, scissors. I like laughing about weeing. It's good here, said Max, because there's only us. No one to tell us to win or smile or study or earn money or shooting us, said Hassan. What about my dad? He's a grown-up, said Florida loyally. But he's not like the other grown-ups, said Samson too. He's different. I don't know why. I really wanted to tell him. I wanted to say, well, I'm a child too. But I didn't. I did the dadly thing. I let him go on believing. And then I took him round the moon again. And again. Round and round as if the moon was a great big fairground ride. And now I'm here on this command module. All on my own. Where are the others? I'll tell you. I'll tell you because I'm feeling really proud of all of us. I'll tell you though, they're never going to believe me. I know that even if we do get back alive, Dr. Drax is going to deny everything. Plus we sign forms promising to keep the whole thing a secret. The only way anyone will hear this recording and know what we've done is if we all die on re-entry and this phone is somehow recovered from the wreckage. If it happens, I'd quite like my dad to know what we did. Because the best thing is, the others are down there, on the moon. Next chapter, Logic says. After our third lunar orbit, they still didn't want to go back to Earth. I said, we'll have to go back in the end. Why? We've got food. We've got lots of food, said Hassan. Yeah, but not a lifetime supply. Anyway, Earth's your home. You've got to go back. I was thinking about the Little Stars Drama Club, proper food, mum and dad. When we get back, said Florida quietly just to me, I won't have a dad. I looked at them all. You can't spend all your life up here. The moment he said it, I remembered Alan saying that in a way, he had spent all his life up here. That's what the memories of the moon were so bright and vivid. The things he did on Earth seemed grey by comparison. And I thought how absolutely cosmic it'd be if I could fix it for him. If I could make it so that part of them was always up here. So that's when we were back on Earth, that the dads were yelling and pushing them. They could just tune out, come back up here in the brightest memories. They'd always be kids. I got Samson too to run a simulation on Orbiter 4. Basically, the Dandelion can't land anywhere. It's supposed to stay in space until it falls apart. But the command module is designed to touch down in the desert. And Dr. Drax's health and safety policy, massive over-provision, means that there's 2 of everything. 2 sets of retro engines, 2 sets of parachutes, twice as much fuel as you need. The only thing there wasn't 2 of was the heat shield. But that was there to protect you when you re-enter Earth's atmosphere. And you wouldn't need that for a lunar descent, because there isn't any atmosphere. Logic says it's possible, said Samson too. Of course, if you used half the fuel, you wouldn't have any spare. It's a calculated risk. He seemed cool about it, but then he did think the whole thing was a simulation. We projected the wrist station simulation onto the wall so we could all watch the command module floating down towards the moon, just plopping on the lunar surface in a shower of dust. Seeing it happen that way made us feel that it already happened in some way. Florida said, can we really do that? Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it now. The simulation is based on a 2-hour schedule, said Samson too. It would be feasible for the duration of one orbit. We'd have to redock with a Dandelion and you could get back to Earth's orbit. But could you redock? Well, the command module and the Dandelion are stuck together now, but if we unstick them, we should be able to re-stick them. Someone would have to stay on board the Dandelion just to guide it. Just like they did on the Apollos, said Florida. Allegedly, said Samson too. She said, well, that should be you then, Samson too, because you don't think there's anything out there anyway. I'd be very interested to see how far this simulation goes, said Samson too. I said, I'll stay. I can spend the time you practicing the redocking on the wrist station. I'll be a genius at it by the time you come back. Max was worried. He said, there should be an adult down there to supervise. I said, no, the adults should be up here keeping the place nice when you get home. You don't want a grown-up down there spoiling things. It should be kids only, with the dust and everything, but like a giant sandpit. It's a crazy idea, said Hassan. Florida was beginning to scowl. I said, but you've come all this way, 250,000 miles. Surely it would be really crazy not to go the last 68. And Max, this is your chance to press the green button. And Florida, you'll like it when you get there. So I packed them off into the command module with their helmets and the space snacks and some drinks, as if they were going to the beach. Florida was the last through the hatch, and as she closed it, I said, hey, before you go, take these. Tell me what it's like, water fighting on the moon. And I gave her a few of the little rocket-shaped bottles of water. They climbed into the command module, sealed the hatch behind them, and pressed the green button. I felt the old dandelion sort of jump backwards, like it had hit a wall. It took a few minutes, but in the end it stabilised, and when it did, somebody spoke to me. The unmistakable voice of Keira Knightley. Hi, we realised that you had the choice of attractions today, and we'd like to thank you for choosing the dandelion. I nearly jumped out of my spray-on suit. It turned out that separating from the command module activated the welcome system, so all these safety announcements played, then Pirates of the Caribbean started running on a plasma screen on the wall. I watched it for a bit, but to be honest, I preferred watching the stars through the window. And then the dandelion moved onto the dark side again, and the picture sort of digitised, froze, then vanished. This was my 5th time around the back of the moon. I was in a lower orbit now, but I suppose in a way I wasn't as far away as I've been the other times, but it felt a lot further. A lot further, because I was alone. Everyone else, and I mean everybody else, the other kids, Mum, Dad, Dr. Drax, the entire populations of China, America, Africa and Russia, children, grown-ups, old people, people shopping, eating, sleeping, being born, dying, even people who've been dead for hundreds of years like Tutankhamun. They were all somewhere else. I was the only human being on the far side of the moon. Each time we'd gone round before, we'd spent the whole time looking at the blank space where the moon was. This time I looked out, and there were the stars. There's no point trying to describe them. It'd be like trying to describe the molecules of oxygen you're breathing. There's just too many of them. The space between the Earth and the moon, that's space because space between things. But on the other side of the moon, that's not space. It's not being between anything. This is the universe, and I feel like I'm seeing it all. Every bit of it, and it's big. There are more stars than there are people. Billions, Alan had said, and millions of them might have planets just as good as ours. Ever since I can remember, I felt too big, but now I felt too small. Too small to count. Every star's massive, and there's so many of them. How could anyone care about one star when there are so many spare ones? And what if stars too were small? What if all the stars were just atoms or something even bigger? What if stars just pixels and the Earth was a lot less than a pixel? What does that make us? What does that make me? Not even dust. I felt tiny. For the first time in my life, I felt too small. The dandelion was filling up with light. The stars were getting just a bit dimmer, like someone was drawing a curtain over them. But I knew what was behind the curtain now. Behind the curtain was everything. And I was nothing. What was the point of even trying to find the others? What's the point in doing anything? I felt my hand grip on the wheel, but I didn't know which way to turn it. How could I do anything make a difference? And if I asked for help, who'd hear me? Then the phone pinged. I got a text. Welcome to Drax Universal, the first universal network. And just after that, it rang. I answered it. A voice said, Liam, where are you, son? It was me dad. Well, is this you, Dad? Of course it's me. Been ringing for days. Ever since you rang us, your mum was worried about you. She thought you sounded upset, and she's worried that you're letting you stay up too late. Where are you now, by the way? It's a great signal. Oh, it's a new network. I was still looking back towards the massive empty universe, but I was talking to my dad, and suddenly everything sounded different. My dad's voice was real. The stars were just decorations. Are you okay? Because if you're not, I'll come round and pick you up. Oh, I'm okay. Anyway, it's a bit far. Doesn't matter how far it is, I'm your dad. If you want me to pick me up, just say so. I was going to say something, but then he said, do you see that match last night? I think they're developing a real attitude problem. They go 1-0 down and they just fall to pieces. Do you find that St. Christopher, by the way? Oh, yes, thanks. Don't forget to bring it home. My dad gave me that, and he's not a saint anymore, St. Christopher. But anyway, he looks after me. You know the story, don't you? I did. St. Christy was some kind of giant superhero. He used to travel travellers across a river, and one day this toddler turned up and asked him to carry him. St. Christopher popped him on his shoulders and carried him, but the toddler kept getting heavier and heavier until St. Christopher nearly drowned. It turned out the toddler was Jesus, so when St. Christopher was carrying, he was carrying, well, the world. It's a story about gravity, really. I bet it's nice in the Lake District this morning. I bet you got a nice view. What can you see? Oh, yeah, I said, I've got a great view. I could see the earth, and it was lovely that the stars have been. The earth was, you could see it was special. Maybe because he was getting tired of being weightless. I thought about gravity and how good gravity is. Not just because it keeps you up on the ground, even though it is good, I mean. I love being weightless, but it's like living on candy floss. In the end, you want potatoes, but it wasn't that. It's gravity that keeps the gases around the earth and the gases we breathe. And it keeps the water and the oceans and the clouds in the sky, so you never get to be 130 degrees on the surface. And it's gravity that keeps the sun together. And if there were even a tiny bit more gravity than there is, the sun would be more compact and it would burn brighter and faster, and it only lived a few million years, so there wouldn't have been chance for life to grow. And if there was even a little less gravity, the sun would burn too dim, and so Earth would have never got warm enough for life. Are you on the main road? It was Dad again. Not really. Well, yeah, in a way. In my head, I was listening to all the things I could remember from Earth. Mum, Dad, Southport, the fair, the 61 bus. I put my thumb up to blot the Earth out again, but it didn't quite blot out. And then I saw something like a tiny mosquito whizzing over the top of my thumb. Somewhere out there. The command module was on its way back. Dad said, I tell you what, can you see a puppet hotel or something? Hang on, my credit's going here, text me. I'll top up using that Draxwell thing to find you. Righto. And his phone went dead. Which was just as well, because the docking procedures take a bit of concentrating. I was putting the phone away now till the children are back on board. Cheers.